What's up, guys? I'm Marcellus Williams, aka TheSwolefessor, in education on health and social well-being. Today, guys, I want to be talking to you about two things that I still feel people don't understand when it comes to building strength or muscle mass. That's the two, once again, go hand in hand. Now, in the description box down below, guys, I'm going to have 4 videos linked, which if you have not seen these yet, I highly suggest you watch these before you watch this video, just because certain topics and things that I talk about in this video, you're not going to have a firm grasp or understanding of what I'm saying if you haven't at least covered these topics first. And if you don't do that and you watch this video first and you end up asking me a question about one of the topics that's related to one of the videos linked in the description down below, I'm probably just going to direct you to the links in the description down below. Not to blow you off, but because it makes way more sense for you to watch a video that's dedicated to that topic relating to your question than for me to like type out several paragraphs trying to answer that question, which just ends up probably confusing you way more than what's needed. But anyway, those 4 videos down below are going to be one of the first videos I ever did on this channel over progressive overload and why it's the key to it all, a video over the connection between strength and muscle mass or hypertrophy, a video that goes over why rep ranges in and of themselves don't matter when it comes to hypertrophy. It's all about total workload, as in the total volume, the sets times the reps times the weights. And the 4th video is going to be why total workload, meaning the sets times the reps times the weight, only matters within the context of hard sets, meaning you can't just endlessly add just sets and reps and completely disregard the weight, which means you're just completely disregarding mechanical tension, because that's going to lead to junk volume and that's not going to lead to maximizing your strength or your muscle growth. Now, assuming you've seen those videos already, let's get right into it. So the two things, guys, that people still seem to be having a huge misconception about in terms of like just building strength and building hypertrophy is, first and foremost, the fact that building strength really will lead to building muscle, and building muscle will lead to building more strength. But the reason that I feel a lot of you guys are confused by this is because you guys keep focusing on like crazy outliers and things like powerlifting, for example. Like, you guys will see people that are like in my weight class, which is 74 kg weight class, is like 163 pounds or even lower, and you'll see people pulling like, you know, in the 600s, and you'll be like, wow, I weigh like 180 or I weigh 200 pounds, and like I've been training for this many years and I still can't pull that much weight. Like, I can't deadlift like in the 600s. Like, why is that? If size equals strength, why is it that I, as a bigger individual, am not lifting as much as somebody else? And I've tried to make this very clear, because you guys have to understand it's relative to you as an individual, based upon things like your height, your leverages, your just maximal potential muscle growth, and your maximal strength potential for any given amount of muscle that you build, because that varies from individual. That's what I mean when I say building strength will lead to building more muscle and building muscle will lead to more strength. It completely comes down to you as the individual, meaning like if you right now have a certain amount of muscle on your frame, right? And you add more muscle to your frame, that is going to lead you getting stronger. Like, if your legs are like have a certain amount of muscle on them right now and you get your legs bigger, you're going to get stronger on like the squat, the leg press. Or if you are squatting a certain amount of weight right now and you add 50 pounds to your squat, that's going to add muscle mass to your legs. But it's all relative to you. Just because your legs are a certain size compared to somebody else's doesn't by default mean that you're going to lift more than that other person. It simply means that you are going to be lifting more than what you would have been able to otherwise. Why? Because what is the purpose of muscle, guys? It's movement, force production. The more muscle mass you have on you, the more potential force production you're going to be able to do, you know, assuming neuromuscular efficiency is on point, assuming that you've learned how to properly do the movement, proper technique. More mass is going to add more strength, and more strength is going to add more mass. That's just simply the way that it works. But what you guys have to understand when it comes down to the individual is, like I said, things like leverage, is height. Somebody who's like in my weight class or below, like, you notice a lot of people in my weight class are below or shorter. I'm 5'7", which in my weight class isn't even like the shortest there is. That's actually like kind of tall in some cases for my weight class. If you look at a lot of people in my weight class, they're like 5'5" or shorter. And if you look at the weight class below that, they're definitely like 5'5" or shorter. So when you think about the fact that somebody, let's say they're really short, they have short legs, but let's say they have like long arms relative to their torso, they're going to be able to deadlift quite a bit. Why? Because they have such a short range of motion to do it. Whereas if you're, maybe you weigh more, maybe you weigh 180 pounds, but you're like a much taller, lankier dude, or maybe even worse, you have long legs but kind of short arms, that's going to make the deadlift a harder movement for you. Granted, both individuals, whether you're the person built for the deadlift or the person who's built poorly for the deadlift, you're going to add more to your pool by adding overall more muscle mass, for sure, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to add enough muscle mass to suddenly outpull somebody else, because it's relative to the individual. Something else that's important to understand, since we're talking about deadlifts anyway, is that how much your muscle mass affects a movement varies from movement to movement. For example, like the bench press would be like on the far right end of the spectrum, where the more mass you have, that's obviously going to add a lot to your bench press. That's why you tend to see people in heavier weight classes benching more. Granted, once again, there's outliers, there's exceptions, like people that maybe have really short arms and like maybe they just arch crazy hard. So in that case, it's more about them manipulating their leverages and just cutting the range of motion more so than just getting strong. But if we're just talking about people who are like, you know, going through a nice full range of motion on the bench press, more often than not, the people who are heavier tend to be able to bench way more, because with the bench press, the whole connection between muscle mass and strength is very, very high. And then the squat would be something that's kind of in the middle. Like obviously your leverages are going to have an impact on the squat. Same example, if you are very short and you have short legs, then you don't have to go through quite as long a range of motion to squat as much weight. But even so, there is a direct connection between how much muscle mass that you have, like, you know, especially with your back and your legs, in proportion to how much you can squat. And then the deadlift is going to be like on the far left end of the spectrum, where yes, adding more muscle mass, like, you know, to your legs, to your back, it's going to help you be able to pull more, but that's not as big of a factor in your pull as what your leverages are, which is once again why you see like throughout the weight classes, different people just lifting crazy amounts of weight regardless of what they weigh, because leverages have a much bigger impact on that. So it's important to understand this, because if you don't and you keep making these comparisons to other people, then you're going to get caught up in this weird idea that, oh, it's not about like, you know, it's not about like building more strength is going to lead to more muscle, or vice versa. It's like I got to train the way that this guy trains in order to, you know, get as strong as he does. And you have to keep in mind, guys, that when it comes down to all this, at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is predetermined by your genetics. The way you train, how you go about it, that's just going to help you optimize the potential that you already have, but you can't change the top end potential that you have, because that's set the day you're born. So that's the first thing that I want to cover, and I want to just make that perfectly clear, so I hope I'm not getting anywhere near as many questions about this anymore. Yes, building more muscle mass will make you stronger relative to yourself. Now, that has nothing to do with how strong or weak anybody else around you is going to be, right? So that's the first thing to understand. The second misconception, ironically enough, I think comes more from like the bodybuilding end of things. And that's like the fact that, assuming you understand stuff, okay, I understand progressive overload. I understand total workload in the context of hard sets. I understand that rep ranges in themselves don't matter, meaning I can maximize muscle growth off triples. I can maximize muscle growth off doing sets of 10. So long as like the total workload is going up over time in the context of hard sets, I'm going to get bigger, I'm going to get stronger. Cool, let's see you guys understand that. Something that's been coming up a lot lately, especially in the quote-unquote more evidence-based community, which it really sucks even saying that, because I used to be so big on thinking like, yeah, this is what we need, more like evidence-based, you know, YouTubers, things like that. But now it's just gone to like I've said before in past videos, an opposite extreme. Yeah, you got like the bro scientists who just do everything based upon what they feel or their experiences, which oftentimes that's not valid, not applicable. But now you have all these other people where they want to do every little thing based off some random study that they barely understood, barely read through, cherry picked one part of it, and like, oh look, this supports what I'm doing, so I want to do it. And at the end of the day, the problem with both groups is they aren't being practical. That's the thing. We're talking about your experiences, and we're talking about science and research. They don't negate one another, they work hand in hand together, but you have to be practical with what you're doing and with what you're reading and how you're applying it to what you're doing. So in terms of what I'm saying as far as like what's coming from like the bodybuilding evidence-based world, is all this stuff with EMG studies, meaning, okay, I understand that I gotta, you know, do more workload, but now I want to figure out, okay, what's the best movement to do workload on? If I'm trying to get my back bigger, if I'm trying to get my legs bigger, what's the best way of going about it? And instead of being practical and using movements that we know to work, like your basic movements, bench, squat, deadlift, pull-ups, overhead press, everybody is trying to find, I don't know if it's due to laziness because we just don't want to do those movements, but they're just trying to be like, oh, well, I want to do this machine, and look, this EMG study shows that I get this much activation with this machine. It's like, you guys have to understand, EMG studies, like in the simplest form, all it shows is like activation, excitement, that something's going on there. It doesn't show mechanical tension, which, like I said, you guys know is important. That's like intensity, like total workload on the bar. It doesn't show anything about mechanical tension. It doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, if you do this, then you're gonna experience like the most growth. It's just showing a certain amount of activation there. Like, no one is gonna be able to convince me that any type of rowing machine is gonna be able to put more total tension or more total work on the back than like a weighted pull-up. You're just not. You're not gonna be able to convince me that the leg press is gonna be able to put more total mass on your legs than like a squat, because it biomechanically doesn't make sense. That's what you have to understand. We're talking about mechanical tension, we're talking about biomechanics, and the fact that it, like I said, it goes beyond just like the set and the reps, or even just the weight. We have to have other things that go into it, like range of motion. For example, if I'm doing dumbbell shoulder press with 80 pounds and I'm going all the way up and all the way down, I guarantee you that's going to be far more beneficial than doing 90 pounds, which is 10 more pounds for the same sets and reps, but just coming halfway down, halfway up. Why? You're doing half the range of motion, you're doing half of the total work. That's actually less mechanical tension. And you know what? That's another video I have in the description down below, like a fifth one, going over the understanding between time under tension as it actually relates to mechanical tension versus this very misconstrued idea of constant tension that bodybuilders have come up with. I'll have that in the description down below as well. But when we're talking about tension, we're talking about mechanical tension. We're talking about like the amount of weight that your body is under, the range of motion that you're going through. That's what comes into account with it. Like, there's so many EMG studies that show all these different things, and people just run with it instead of understanding like, okay, that's not practical. Like, for example, EMG studies that show like, oh, low bar squats and high bar squats like show like the same amount of activation like in the quads. Now, let me be perfectly clear. I'm not saying that you cannot maximize quad growth with low bar squats. You can do low bar squats, you can do high bar squats, you can do front squats. So long as you are progressively overloading with that movement, you can maximize your quad growth with any of those. But the idea that there is not a different amount of tension being placed on the quads with those movements just doesn't make sense. I don't care if the EMG studies show like the same type of activation, it's not showing tension. Think about it. Why can we lift more? Why can most people lift more with low bar compared to high bar? Because you're biomechanically changing the lift. When you're putting that bar, lowering your back, you're changing the amount of tension that's on the quads, you're changing the amount of tension that's on other muscles, and you're changing the amount of involvement that other muscles have. You're getting your posterior chain far more involved. You're getting that upper back and the hamstrings far more involved when you're doing things like low bar squats, and you're changing like the range of motion. You're changing the leverage, you're changing the moment arm. So if all that's happening, then the total tension that's being placed on the quads with low bar compared to high bar is going to be different. And that's why people feel that difference. There's like, and that's one of those examples where I tell people all the time, oh, you can't just go based off what you feel if what you're quote unquote feeling is clearly going against something that's already been established and proven as factual like evidence. But in this case, what you're feeling actually goes hand in hand with biomechanics and with the practicality of the research that's out there. So regardless of what an EMG study says, when you're doing high bar, there's a different type of tension on the quads. And that's why most of you, when you do high bar, you feel your quads more than when you do low bar. So this idea that like, oh, the exact same tension is the same. Once again, not saying you can't maximize muscle growth with either, but I would say that, yeah, if you're doing like, you know, the same sets, the same reps with the same weight, high bar versus low bar, and you can't progress consistently, you're probably going to see a different rate of quad development than what you will with the low bar. Doesn't mean you can't maximize with both, but maybe you maximize it a little bit faster with high bar. But then again, on the flip side, there's the point that, okay, with low bar though, you can do more weight. So then at that point, it just comes down to maybe based upon your leverages, well, how much more tension are you getting on the quads with high bar versus low bar? If it's not much difference at all, then maybe going with low bar makes more sense. Why? Because you're getting more total workload as far as the weight. But if it's a drastic difference, then maybe it's worth doing the high bar, because even though it's less weight, if it's a longer range of motion and more total tension on the quads, then they may be getting more total work. And if your purpose of your squatting is to grow the legs, then maybe that's the move you want to go with. But once again, I'm not here to argue whether, you know, front squats, high bar, low bar, do whatever you want. Like I say, you can maximize with any of them. But I'm using it as an example to help you guys understand how this stuff works in a practical sense. When it comes to like the whole evidence-based bodybuilding world, it's really just becoming a joke to me, because it's not people seeking truth or seeking what's going to be beneficial for most people. It's people just trying to find studies that back them do training how they want to train. At the end of the day, you can train how you want to train regardless. That's fine. Any informative YouTuber who really just wants you guys to be healthy and strong is going to be happy that you're training, period. But if you're going to be an informative YouTuber or an evidence-based YouTuber, you need to be putting information out there that's going to be best for the general audience. And if you're putting something out there that's best for maybe a specific group, or you're doing something that you think that you like best for you, just say that. Just say, hey, in my opinion, like for me, I like doing this because it's fun, I enjoy it. You don't have to try and cherry pick science or studies or EMG studies to support that, like, oh, this is why I do this, and you all should be doing this, because EMG studies like are not even close to being like the most important thing when it comes to like if a movement is best for you or not. So those are the two things which ironically kind of come from like people paying attention to elite level powerlifters who are outliers with their genetics, and then paying attention to a bunch of like bodybuilding stuff. And that's the thing I want you guys to understand. When it comes down to people who are training for general strength, health, and fitness, you're just trying to get bigger, you're just trying to get stronger, you don't really need to be focusing so much on bodybuilding, and you don't necessarily even need to focus so much on powerlifting. Granted, you can take different things from those groups that are applicable, but it all comes down to, okay, what's going to be best for me and my specific goals in terms of where you're at as a lifter, beginner, intermediate, advanced, and in terms of what your goals are. Are you really just trying to focus on like, yeah, I want to maximize strength and growth, but I'm a little bit more focused on strength training, or hey, I'm a little bit more focused on hypertrophy, because even though they go hand in hand, you can kind of skew one slightly towards the other. But this idea that they're like just completely separate, and that, you know, you gotta like do all this crazy training for hypertrophy and do all this different type of training for strength training, like, simply isn't the case. And I just wanted to make that clear. So hopefully with this video and all the videos down below, as well as the several others that I've done that all relate to this topic, or topics rather, you guys now have a firm, better understanding of those two things. Mechanical tension matters when it comes to muscle growth. I go so far as to say that like right under progressive overload, mechanical tension matters most, because like I said, even if we look at total workload, if mechanical tension isn't where it needs to be within that workload, it's just junk volume. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing to understand is that yes, strength equals size and size equals strength, but relative to yourself. You have to understand that if you get stronger, you will put on more size, and if you put on more size, you will get stronger. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be stronger than somebody else, or that the amount of size you put on relative to somebody else is going to equal the same amount of strength that they gain, because that just comes down to your genetics. But yeah, hopefully I made all that clear. That's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go in the comment down below, let me know what you did. If you're not, leave a comment down below, let me know what I can do better. Like the video, share, subscribe. Keep it simple, specific, scientific. I'll catch you guys later.